Cosmic Fairy here. I hope you're all having the best day that you can, given the current life conditions that you find yourself in. Today, I want to talk about a subject that a lot of people like to shy away from, but one which I have personally found life-changing, and it's shadow work. I think that many are scared that they will stay stuck in negative emotions if they delve into their shadow. And if they bring focus onto the negative in their lives, they will just get more negative circumstances. The opposite is true. An unresolved, unexamined shadow is a big attractor for negative circumstances. This is because your higher self is looking for situations that is going to cause you to heal. And these situations are often going to be pretty similar to the trauma that originally created the shadow in the first place. When we begin to shine a light and reclaim these shadow aspects of ourselves, we're more at peace and we're better able to move towards the things that we want in life. So what is shadow work? Essentially, it brings awareness to the parts of ourselves that have been rejected or disowned by our conscious mind or a conscious self. Generally, if we haven't engaged in any shadow work, we're unaware that we have these traits that we deem to be negative inside of ourselves. And these are things that we often end up judging other people for having these traits. We just don't see them within ourselves. In modern times, shadow work was pioneered by Carl Jung, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that shadow work has its roots in many ancient shamanic practices that have existed throughout the world. And, you know, we all have a shadow to some extent. Why do we have a shadow? So the shadow is made of the unconscious, disowned parts of ourselves, and they're most commonly created from traumatic experiences in childhood. And this is because there was certain traits that our parents or our caregivers perceived as being bad or wrong. And because we wanted to receive love from them, we essentially squashed these traits within ourselves and tried to just extinguish these behaviors from ourselves. The severity of the trauma that's needed to create a shadow can really vary greatly. So it could be something extreme, such as childhood sexual abuse, or it could simply be a discouraging teacher claiming that you weren't very good at writing, for example. Not all of the traumatic events that create disowned parts are created in childhood. Some can occur in adulthood too, because we could have got this from a bad relationship or a difficult work situation. Okay, so there is also generational trauma. So this is where something that happened to your grandparents or your great-grandparents has a trickle-down effect on you. So I'll give a personal example to demonstrate. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and this comes from my grandmother. She lost her mother when she was very young, when she was 4, and she had a stepmother that was not very kind or loving to her. And my grandmother's coping strategy was perfectionism. And it was passed down to my mum and then to me. I really also want to bring up that in addition to generational traumas, we can also experience past life traumas. Now, this is where there's no obvious cause for a certain aspect of your shadow from this lifetime. For example, if you have trouble voicing your truth in this life, it might have been that you were persecuted or perhaps killed for voicing your truth in a past life. So what are the benefits of reintegrating the shadow parts of us back into ourselves? At first, it can seem very uncomfortable to look at the parts of ourselves that we don't like, and also to revisit the emotions surrounding past trauma. The thing is that over time, shadow work will help us feel more confident in ourselves. Symptoms like anxiety are going to be greatly reduced because there isn't that tension and inner conflict within us. We have a better understanding of what motivates us, what our triggers are, and we feel more comfortable to be all of ourselves and therefore more at ease and more authentic. Some of the disowned parts and traits, these can actually be beneficial for us when they're used in the right way. For example, if we were taught as a child that we should never get angry, we're most likely going to have issues in adult life with boundaries and defending ourselves. If we get in touch with the anger that is inside and find a positive outlet for it, it's going to help us be more assertive and effectively defend ourselves when we need to. And we're going to be able to have clearer boundaries with the people around us. When we engage in shadow work, it helps us develop more compassion for others around us, and it helps improve all our relationships. When we accept the darker aspects of ourselves, we can accept them more readily in others. Having deep compassion for the struggles that everybody is facing is really just going to help us to be, again, more at ease in our life. Shadow work is also going to help us have a clearer connection to our intuition and our higher selves. The voices coming from our shadow can be very loud, and they can drown out the voices of our guides, and it's gonna, it's gonna contain a lot of fear, and it's going to block our intuition, and it's maybe going to block us from following our intuition. So once we honor these voices and listen to them and understand where we come from, really all this conflict is going to melt away, and we're going to just have a greater sense of knowing of what we need to do in each moment. Overall, there's just a great sense of peace that comes from truly knowing ourselves. We might not be able to remove our shadow, but understanding what it is and what triggers us gives us better self-knowledge. We just really feel more able to handle life's ups and downs with grace and ease. So what can we do to begin to work with our shadow? Well, a key practice to working with our shadow is really just becoming a non-judgmental observer and really developing self-compassion. We need to be able to observe our behavior and understand why without being in judgment of ourselves. Being in judgment it's just going to delay our ability to integrate the parts of our shadow self. If we start to engage in shadow work and really just our goal is, okay, I'm going to look at this part of myself just so that I can get rid of it, it is not going to be very effective. We have to have love and compassion for this part. I mean, often they're like our inner child that is trapped in some trauma, and we can't really go to that inner child and be like, okay, I'm going to listen to you and, but I'm just going to do that so that you'll like, shut up. We have to really just go in with the objective of just observing and understanding and giving love to that part of ourselves. And this is really where the magic happens. So I'm going to say it's like one of my top things for everything, but journaling is going to be a key part of any shadow work, because with writing as well, you're really often getting out emotions that are coming from a different place of your mind than just when you're thinking about them. So when you're the actual process of writing them down, you'll often find different aspects actually come up when you write them down. And you can be a little bit more measured as well in just how you process them and how you're looking at and observing what's coming up from you when you're examining a particular shadow aspect. So triggers. This is going to be a key way of seeing our shadow. And really, like when we get triggered, it's a gift if you're doing shadow work, because it's like, oh, okay, this has made me feel really emotionally charged. And then, we can go to our journaling practice after and be like, why did this situation make me feel so emotionally charged? When have I experienced similar situations in the past? What was the first time I can remember feeling this way? And yeah, I mean, basically every trigger is an opportunity to learn something about ourselves. Another one is when we're projecting things that we don't like in others, we've generally disowned in ourselves. So when we don't like something about someone, this is actually a part of ourselves that we're resisting. So I could say, if I don't like it when people try to manipulate me, I can look for ways that I try to manipulate people. And trust me, even if you think that you're the nicest person in the world, you're going to manipulate people in some way. That is really just human nature. So, it's just about finding those things that you don't want to own in yourself. And in the case of manipulation, it's good to examine, okay, so why would I want to manipulate someone? Is it because I fear experiencing something? Is it because I want to control a situation? Okay, one thing to note with projection is it is also important to temper it with our own boundaries, because sometimes people are just crossing our boundaries and maybe not behaving in a particularly great way towards us. And if we just think that that's projection, well, we're opening ourselves up to not being treated very well. I mean, sure, you can still look at it in that way, but I'm just saying, it just because you have some negative feelings towards someone, it doesn't always mean that it's your responsibility and you're projecting. Sometimes it just genuinely is that somebody else is in a bad place and they're taking it out on you, and it's totally okay to have boundaries. So just a little side note on that one. Another good exercise of shadow work is to look at our family traits of our parents, our siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. Because there's going to be some family traits that are unfavorable. And, nobody knows how to push our buttons like our family. So, these are some of the most kind of juicy shadow aspects to look at, because the unfavorable aspects of your family members that really, annoy you, there will be some aspect of those traits that are contained within you. So this is it's a really good one to work on once you've maybe worked on some of the other easier aspects, such as projecting and your own triggers, because this is going to come up with some kind of deeper family shadows and traumas that you can work with. So I guess I can come up with a family trait of mine that I'm working on, is that we can all be pretty judgmental. And judgment it's an interesting one, because the more that we judge other people, the more essentially that we are judging ourselves. So the more that, I can develop being compassionate to myself, I can develop being compassionate towards others and, my family members especially. It's really important to remember that we're all imperfect beings just trying to make our way. And, we've all got our struggles, and, we don't know what somebody else is going through that is causing them to act out in a certain way. And it's just having some compassion around that. So finally, in terms of the work that we can do with the shadow, it's just really understanding that there are many layers to shadow work. It's not like you're going to do it for a few months and then it's done. It's a cyclical and evolving process. Certain parts of your shadow, they're going to be more easy to accept than others. And, you might do a bunch of healing and go through a period where you feel like, okay, I've got to the bottom of a lot of this. But in the broader sense, pretty much everything that is outside of us in the world that we don't like is contained to some degree within us. And, this is a really challenging aspect to accept, but it really does help us to find peace with what is going on in the external, even if it seems very chaotic. So in terms of this, if we think about it, it's often easy for us to accept our victim role in the world, but it's also important to integrate and accept the parts of us that are the perpetrator a perpetrator of violence in this world. Now, I mean, this doesn't necessarily have to be physical violence, but it can be emotional violence, such as acting in a controlling or dominating manner towards others. Now, you know, this is a good journaling exercise, you know, just looking for parts of yourself where, okay, this was a time or an aspect where I was really the villain. I was the perpetrator, you know, and really accepting that there are times in your life where you, were the aggressor. And just being honest, it really helps us have understanding for some of the difficult things that are going on in the world. Now, it doesn't mean accepting that, you know, bad things happen and that's okay. That's definitely not what I'm saying. It's just really to understand that everything that we don't like that is out there is also in here. So if we can find some resolution within ourselves, then we're going to have more resolution and peace with what we see in the external. And I guess just a final note that it can be useful to work with a counselor or a coach when doing shadow work, because having an outside observer and a second opinion, it can really help us to see things that we are struggling with, or maybe just like have that self-compassion and not be quite so harsh on ourselves, and, you know, help us walk through things if we're getting too charged about a particular subject. Well, I hope I have brought some awareness to the value of shadow work. I hope this will inspire you to take the first steps on the journey of looking into your shadow. Please check out my website, cosmicfairy777.com, where I offer ascension coaching and energy healing. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful day, and namaste.